Now we've got a number of slides of just example problems here, so I'm going to work through these. Good practice problems for you to do. I'll work through the answer here. So very simple, straightforward one here. What's the price for 12-year zero? Rates are 6%, so let's see, 12, 6, there's no payment, $1,000, and find that price, $496, so A is the right answer here. It's pretty straightforward. What's the yield to maturity of a 14-year zero? So again, so 14, it's going to sell for 340.46. Make that negative. That goes in as a present value. There's no payment because it's a zero. $1,000 at the end. Calculate the present value. Ugh, I messed that up, didn't I? Let's do this again. So 14 in. I'm solving for I in this case. I know the present value, 340.46. It's negative. There's no payment. $1,000 future value. Solve for I. And 8%. So B is the answer here, 8%. Okay. And here's a problem using current yield. So this is 9% coupon bonds sell at a yield to maturity of 10% and a current yield of 9.8375%. What's the remaining maturity on the bonds? Now, oftentimes I'll ask a question like this on the exam, and people always ask me, well, you didn't give us a price on the bond, so we don't know how to solve this problem without the price. Well, you have to remember what the current yield is. It's coupon payment divided by the price. So knowing the current yield and knowing the coupon rate, it's easy to solve for the price, right? The price is going to be $90 divided by the current yield, and that turns out to be $914.87. So now I can just put that in the calculator. You got to be sure that this is the opposite sign of these two payments. So putting that in, you'll get an N of 20. Okay. And here's an example problem doing that, one for you to practice. So it has a current yield of 12.25%, a 13.5% coupon. So I know that the price is going to be the amount of the coupon payment divided by the current yield. So I'm going to say 135 divided by 0.1225. And that's going to be the price of the bond today. What's the remaining maturity? Well, I know I'm going to put that in negative as present value. The payment is 135. The future value is 1,000. The yield to maturity is 12. And I can compute the remaining maturity, 14.95. which I rounded up to 15 years as the answer. So C here, 15 years. The exact answer is 14.95. Okay, another question here. Several years ago, the company issued bonds at face value with a yield to maturity of 7%. Now, the thing to remember here is that when it says bonds were sold at face value, that means they sold for par. Right, I've got here sold for future value, and future value in bond problems is 1,000. So they sold for par, right? And you should remember from several slides ago, if a bond sells for par, then that means that its coupon rate and the yield to maturity are the same. So this is a kind of a long roundabout way of telling you that the coupon rate on that bond is 7%. Again, I can put a problem like this on the exam, and a lot of students will come to me and say, I can't solve this because you didn't tell me what the coupon payment is. And that's the point of the problem, is you should remember that bonds that sell for par, the coupon rate is equal to the yield to maturity. All right? So now the bond has 8 years of maturity left. The yield to maturity is 15%. What's the price of the bond? Well, if I know the coupon rate, then I can solve this. Right? And I know the coupon rate is 7%. So there we go. The coupon payment will be 70. N is 8, I is 15. It's easy to solve for that price. $641.01. Okay. Now this example continues and says, all right, so the price of the bond is $641.01. And if you look up this price it will say the bond has a yield to maturity of 15% because that's how yield to maturity is defined. Based on the current price and receiving all the future payments, you'd have a yield of 15%. But this problem says, well, suppose that investors know, everybody knows that that company's not going to be able to pay. The business isn't doing real well and it's going to decline in the future, and you just don't think that the company's going to be able to pay. Now, we'll be able to make the coupon payments because they're small. That's $150 for each bond. But at the end, they're going to have to pay $1,000 for each bond. That's a much larger payment, and everybody knows you're not going to be able to pay that. People expect that they're going to be able to pay 80% of that, which would be $800. The question now is, based on these expectations, what yield to maturity do investors expect to receive? Well, now you can look at, they're paying this much, $641.01, to receive these payments, right? So they're going to receive the coupon payments just as promised, but the final payment, the par payment, instead of getting $1,000, they're only going to get $800. So if we put these numbers in and solve in our calculator, and so the actual yield that investors expect is 12.87. Right? Notice that's smaller than the yield if you just calculated it based on the promised payments, having $1,000 here. But since everybody knows that they're not going to be able to pay that much, you can say, well, investors must expect 12.87% return on this bond. Okay. So here we're asking for the yield to maturity on a bond that sells for $1,200. It has an 8% coupon payment. 1 year later, N will be 9, so we're just going to put those in. Don't forget, 1 year later, N is 9. So there's the price, the payment, the future value. You can solve for I, it's 5.17%. Okay, if you bought this bond for $980 and sold it for $1,200, what's your rate of return over the year? Well, again, I'm showing you the wrong way. This is wrong because you forgot the coupon payment. Right? This is the price you sold it for divided by the price you paid for it. But remember, you kept the bond for 1 year, so you get a coupon payment out of that. So here's the correct way to do that. The amount you sold it for plus $80 divided by 980 minus 1, 30.61%. Okay, so here's one for you to practice. I'll put the answer up, but I encourage you to stop the recording and practice this. So you buy a 12% 8-year maturity bond for $1,050. Well, I know the price, so I don't really need to do anything with these numbers. I know I bought it for $1,050. 1 year later, the bond sells for $1,175. So this is a pretty easy problem. I know that I sold it for $1,175, and since it's 1 year later, I also collected the coupon payment, which would be $120. Well, there's the total amount of money I made from this investment. I've got to divide that by the price I paid for it. That's $1,050. And subtract 1, and so the answer, yes, is 23.33%. D is the right answer here. Okay, so here's another question. You buy a 30-year bond, 4%. Now, I didn't give you the price here. I just gave you the yield to maturity. So you're going to have to figure out the price you paid for it. And then you have to figure out the price you sell it for 1 year later. Now, notice the yield has gone up, so that's not going to do you any favors there. The price is going to go down. You will collect that coupon. And the question here is, what's your rate of return? So, yeah, say which way did rates go? Is this good or bad for you? In this case, it's bad. Rates went up. You're selling, so that's not a good thing. I think I've got this worked out in the slides. Yes, here's how you would find the price you paid for it. Start off, it's 30 years. There's a $40 payment. There's the yield. You get a price of that much. 1 year later, we're going to sell it. Notice here that N is now 29. It's a year later. We'll sell it for that price. We want to know that rate of return. Remember, we're going to have to add the coupon payment in too, because at the end we get the price we sell for it plus we get paid the coupon payment, and that's a return of minus 5.43%. Okay, here's another one you can practice. So you buy it at 10, a year later the yield's 11. What is your rate of return? Well, first we have to find the price we pay for it. So 18N, the yield is 10, pays 90, $1,000 future value, and we would pay that much for it. I'm going to change the sign. I'm going to put that number in memory. So there's the price I paid for it. Now I'm going to find the price I sold it for. It's 1 year later, so N now is 17. The new yield's 11. And it still pays 90. And the par's 1,000. Find that new price, $849. But since I kept it a year, I also collect a $90 coupon payment, so I'm going to add $90 to that. I get that much. I'm going to divide that by what I put in memory. Recall 1, that's the price I paid for it. And subtract 1. And I get a 2.29% return, which is B. The answer is B. Now occasionally we'll have students say to me, well, why isn't it negative? Rates went up, the price went down. I expected the return to be negative. And that's good reasoning, but the point here is that when you bought this thing, you didn't expect just a positive return. You expected a return of 10%. You bought it with a yield of 10%, and that says if everything stays the same, you'll earn 10% on this investment. However, rates went the wrong way on you when you're selling a year later, so you know your return is going to be less than 10%. All right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be negative, but certainly less than 10%. Okay, next problem here is a 2-year bond, and we're just saying, well, what's the rate of return on this bond? Notice it's selling at face value, so it's sold for $1,000. If the yield to maturity is 6%, what's the rate of return? Well, we just have to find the price a year from now. That much, add the $80 coupon to it. I don't have a -1 here, and I should, so there should be a -1 here. I think you get the idea. There's the 9.89%. If rates go down, all right. Now if rates are 8%, well, notice this is a 2-year bond. It's selling at face value, so it's selling for par, meaning that since the coupon rate, you can see that it makes coupon payments of $80. The coupon rate is 8%. So that means the original yield was 8%. It's now selling for 8%. So since nothing has changed, you should get an 8% return here. So you can do the calculations if you want. Find the price you'll sell it for next year, add the coupon, divide by the price you paid for it, which is $1,000, all that. You'll get 8%, or you should if you don't make any mistakes. So that's easy to see. Now here's a good one to practice. If rates go up to 10%, find the price next year. Don't forget the coupon payment. Find your rate of return. I'll show you the answer here. Let's see. So next year, 10%. It's going to be a 1-year bond. The yield is 10. The payment's $80,000. Compute the present value. It's that much. I'm going to divide by 1,000 because I paid $1,000 at the start. Made a mistake here. I've forgotten the coupon payments. Let me do that again. There's the present value. Now I need to add in the coupon payment, $80. There we go. I'm going to divide that by 1,000. Subtract 1. And there's the answer, 6.18%. Okay. Okay, I'll stop the recording here. I'll pick up on the next recording.